Well, good afternoon. Well, y'all don't sound excited to be here. If I was retired and where you are, I think I would be excited, and I hope you are. We're glad you're here today. My name is Jonathan Phipps, and we would like to welcome you to the Hall of Fame induction ceremony. One announcement before we begin. On the table there, you'll see a little form we're going to ask you to fill out so that you can get a copy of a DVD of today's event so you can go back and watch it again or share it with family and friends. Please stand with me as the Lancaster High's JROTC presents the colors and Cadet Alex Melgar leads us in the Pledge of Allegiance. After the pledge, please remain standing. Lisa Knox, our instructional specialist for the arts, will lead us in the national anthem.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we held at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watch were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Now it's my pleasure to introduce the Lancaster High School's principal, Ms. Rosalind Mood. Rosalind, we thank you for your excellent leadership and support that you provide students and staff every day. Plus, she followed an inductee that we're having, Dr. Joe Keenan, and he left everything just easy, right? Is that good? If you'll lead us in our invocation.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, as we gather this afternoon to honor the contributions of these educators, we thank you for their lives that have been dedicated to serving children. Thank you for the ways in which they have given of themselves throughout the years as they have poured truth into thousands of young lives. As we celebrate their contributions, Help us to see all that goes on in this world from your point of view, and empower us with your spirit that we may respond not only in our hearts and minds, but also in our words and in our actions. In this way, Lord, we become a channel of your love, of your joy, and of your peace. Amen.
Thank you. You may be seated. Well, today we induct members into the Lancaster County School District Education Hall of Fame. Our Hall of Fame will continue to recognize and honor outstanding educational leaders who make a significant and lasting difference for our children and our community. The awards that we're going to be given today were designed by a local artist, Bob Dollister. The tree, of course, symbolizes the tree of learning. And the figure on the bottom there symbolizes the many ways that you all, Hall of Fame inductees and members, have lifted up our students, teachers, and our school district. I'd like to recognize all the current Hall of Fame members. I know not all of them could attend today, but if you're here and you're already a member, would you please stand? Also, I'd like to ask to take a moment to remember other Hall of Fame members who have passed away, some recently and some in days past. If you would, please join me with a moment of silence. Thank you. The Hall of Fame Selection Committee has chosen this year's honorees. Today, the first inductee is Miss Doris Anderson Hood. Bobby Bailey. How many of you know Bobby Bailey? I've known Bobby for 20 years, and this is the first time Bobby has ever called me and said he couldn't speak. Bobby was scheduled to speak on behalf of Miss Hood, but he's feeling under the weather, and he said that Dr. Curitan could actually read and share his thoughts, followed by Miss Jackie Harris. So I would ask that Ms. Curitan, if you'll come forth, and after that, Miss Jackie. Great.
Good afternoon. Bobby called late last night. He had a medical emergency, but he's doing well, so I wanted to say that. And he asked me to do this for him today, and I consider it an honor because I have a list of sheroes, and this inductee is on that list. Doris Anderson Hood was born in Fort Mill, South Carolina, the elder of the two daughters of the late Deacon Roosevelt Anderson and Deaconess Hattie Robinson Anderson. She had a happy childhood. She was active in the family church, Jerusalem Baptist, in school, and in the family businesses. Her work in the businesses taught her the value of hard work and shaped her future endeavors. She was educated in the Fort Mill Public Schools and graduated valedictorian of the class of 1958. She earned a bachelor's degree in English from South Carolina State College in 1962, graduating third in her class. In 1973, she was awarded the Master of Arts in Teaching from Winthrop University and later earned the Master's Plus 30 designation, also from Winthrop. A lifelong student of learning, she has taken courses in a variety of subjects. Under her father's guidance, she accepted a position as an English teacher at Bar Street High School in 1962. She remained at Bar Street until full integration when she was transferred to Lancaster High School, where she remained until her retirement in 1993. Her years in the public schools were most enjoyable, and she left many indelible prints on the lives of her students. In 1964, Doris married Kenneth M. Hood, and two sons, Kenneth II and Kevin, were born of their union. Mrs. Hood has enriched the Lancaster community by devoting her life's work to the youth and citizens of Lancaster. She is a charter member of the Lancaster, South Carolina Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, established in 1968. As the chapter's first vice president and second president, she was instrumental in the formation of the Delta Teams, a program that presented cultural and educational enrichment activities and scholarships for African American youth during a time when such activities were sorely needed. She was also a charter member of Lancaster County First Steps, serving on the executive board for 6 years as programs and procedures were put into place to get children ready for school. In March of 2002, Governor Jim Hodges appointed her to Foster Care Review Board 6A. Under her innovative leadership, in 2010, Review Board 6A was chosen as State Board of the Year, a very distinguished honor. One of her ideas in 2010 was to sponsor young people in independent living classes an evening of fine dining while learning social etiquette skills at the Fairway Room at the Lancaster Golf Club. The board agreed and covered the cost of that project. Additionally, as a member of Lancaster County Outreach Project in 2010, she was a source for arranging for 4 girls in foster care to attend Camp Cherokee at Kings Mountain State Park at no expense to the state. Mrs. Hood has served in many different capacities to benefit this community. She was a longtime member of Habitat for Humanity and was board president from 2009 through 2011. She was the first African-American female chairperson of the Lancaster County Board of Zoning Appeals and was board member of the year in the year 2000. Additionally, she has served in many different capacities in her church, First Washington Baptist, having joined in 1964. For many years, she was Vacation Bible School director and youth director. Mrs. Hood dearly loves her family and has been a dedicated mother to Kenneth and Kevin, who are here with her today, who have been a blessing to her and in whom she has found much joy and pride. Much to her surprise, Kevin entered the field of education. He has served as principal at several schools and presently is principal at Mount Holly Elementary in Rock Hill. Kenny worked as a contract specialist for the Department of Defense before retiring in March. Congratulations. With the beginning of this school year, Kenny is also in education, working as a sorely needed substitute teacher in Hampton, Virginia, now his hometown. She now has 4 grandchildren, Colin, Kevin II, Kennedy, and Cohen, and she is their Gabby, and has discovered joys and blessings that she had only heard about prior to getting her first grand. Mrs. Hood's family consists of her sister Ruth and Ruth's 3 children and 3 grandchildren, and a host of loving friends, beloved sorority sisters, former students, and her church family. Congratulations, Mrs. Hood.
I think she just read my whole speech, Ms. Hood. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so honored to be asked to speak for my friend. That's how we acknowledge each other. On Sunday, our Sunday afternoon social club that we have at my auntie's house allows us to fellowship together and talk about things from education to basketball to sports of many different kinds, to allow her to read the Lancaster News for the week and also the Charlotte Observer. But the one thing that I want to say about Ms. Hood is that as a former student and as a former individual that lived in foster care myself, sometimes we are not able to be with our parents, and it's those people within our community that set the foundation for who we are and what we will become in the future. Ms. Hood, I am so honored this afternoon that if I'm not doing right, she'll say, "Now, Jackie, I really think you need to think about that." And I'll say, "Maybe you're right, Ms. Hood." But she is the only individual that I know that if she sees a former student in the newspaper, she'll always say, "Now, he's doing really good." And she's going to acknowledge them. And she always says, "Hey, Gerard McWhirter, Kenny, we know Gerard, he's an actor now." She said, "I really think that the Lancaster News needs to do an article about him." She's always uplifting people. But I tell you this last story. This summer, we had a back-to-school rally at Southside Park. Ms. Hood was asked to be the speaker for the event. And she did everything she could to kind of fiddle out of that, but she said to me, she said, "Jackie, I don't think I have anything that I can say that will reach the young people of today." She was sadly mistaken. She spoke that afternoon. The children were engaged with her every word, the encouraging words that sometimes we fail to give young people as they're going along the way. The same words that she gave me as a young girl in her class to let me know that I could do it. You can make it regardless of your circumstances, and that you need to look towards the future. So, Ms. Hood, it seems like I got drafted by the Sunday fellowship gang to make these remarks. I want you to know that we love you. I'll start playing the big joker first. We get that. Always in that teaching mode that we all should want to work so hard to instill what Ms. Hood has done for over 1,000 students that she touched within the Lancaster County School District. 31 years of teaching, 31 years of touching young people's minds, their hearts, and setting the foundation that you can do it. And I just want to say, Ms. Hood, I'm one of those students. So thank you very much to be able to give you your flowers at this appointed time. We love you.
At this time, if Ms. Hood and any family that's with you would please come to the stage so we can give you a chance to speak, if you so desire, and also give you a statue, a trophy.
Good afternoon. I am delighted and humbled to have been recognized for this honor that has been bestowed upon me to become a member of the Lancaster County Education Hall of Fame. I thank the committee for choosing me and my incredibly wise father, who many years ago in the summer after my college graduation found and made me take a job teaching in the Lancaster City Schools, and demanded, when I looked at him as if he were crazy, that I had a choice to go to work or leave his house. And at that time, my only thought was to continue what I loved doing, which was reading. But after Daddy gave me that ultimatum, I ended up here in Lancaster because he found a job for me here and dared me not to take it. And that job has changed my life. So again, I want to thank the committee, particularly Dr. Curitan, my former student, and Ms. Jackie Harris, also one of my former students, and both are my dear friends and loved ones. I want to thank them, and to my loving and wise parents who now abide with the Lord. And to my sons, Kenny and Kevin, for all the love and the joy that they have brought to me. Thank you very much.
Let's give Ms. Hood another round of applause. Well, today's second inductee is Mr. Joseph Keenan. And we have a few folks that are here to share a little bit about Dr. Keenan. Miss Carolyn Jordan will come first, and then Miss Sherry Barrett.
Good afternoon. It's my privilege to talk a little bit about Dr. Joe Keenan. I first met Joe Keenan early in his educational career when he worked as a special education teacher at Lancaster High. I think he taught in the Rice building, but the love of his life, Debbie, taught in the same building that I did. So I would see him routinely coming by her room after school just to talk with her. Little did I know then that was the beginning of a very fruitful, lifelong career for him as an educator in Lancaster County. In between those early teaching assignments in our county and his becoming an administrator in our district, Joe worked on advanced degrees and became Dr. Joe Keenan by spending some summers in graduate programs along with his wife, Debbie. Later, when I moved to the district office, I learned to admire Joe as an administrator, first as principal at North Elementary and then particularly at Lancaster High, where he served for around 2 decades as principal. He took on the responsibilities of principal at Lancaster High at a time when there was great need for stability and leadership at that campus. At Lancaster High, he provided outstanding leadership as he created that very atmosphere of unwavering stability and fairness, especially in the midst of changing landscapes all around the Lancaster area. During his tenure at Lancaster High, he led the school to become a high school that works in our district, in which he initiated a 9th grade academy. Lancaster also increased advanced placement and dual credit offerings in academic and career and technology classes, along with some new course offerings such as culinary arts, Project Lead the Way, and in cooperation with Lancaster County Emergency Preparedness, a firefighter program for high school students. Through his leadership, the school provided a quality learning environment for all students. To ensure that his faculty was prepared for best practices in the classroom, he provided and participated in professional development for teachers, such as writing across the curriculum, teaching on the block schedule. But as far as the students were concerned, his litmus test in decision-making was this: is it good for students? And if it was indeed good for students, then he did all that he could within his power to make it become a reality. One of his true gifts as an administrator was his ability to identify potential in his faculty and staff, and then encourage them to grow even stronger as educators and administrators by mentoring them successfully in areas that they might not even have ever sought on their own. As a result, he supported many of his teaching staff to become strong administrators in their own right. The current principal of LHS and several assistant principals there are a perfect example and a tribute to Joe. He was a true believer of grow your own and occasionally would share those good future principles with other schools in our district. That in itself is a testament to great leadership, to build leadership capacity in others. When I was working on an advanced degree, he even supervised a practicum for me. It was through that experience that I learned just how much, not just the faculty, but also the staff of Lancaster High appreciated and respected Joe. One of my assignments included shadowing a custodian. After Joe introduced me to the day porter that I was to shadow, as we were leaving Joe's office, I said to that gentleman, "What do you do at Lancaster High?" He responded without hesitation and with great pride in his voice, "I do just what that man," pointing to Joe, "asked me to do." The respect and loyalty in that man's response spoke volumes to me. No one was just an employee in Joe's eyes. Although he could come on as strong as, and maybe even as growly as a bear, so appropriate for a Bruin leader, I might add, he has a big heart for others, especially for the less fortunate, always without bringing recognition to himself. Thus, it is difficult to know just how many students he personally helped to have the appropriate marching regalia for graduation, or to have opportunities to attend events that a deserving student's family could not afford, or to provide a weekend camping experience for a special needs student who might never have had that experience without Joe's planning and securing the equipment, or how many faculty, staff, and students he called into his office just to provide words of encouragement in the midst of their personal or family issues. He's just that kind of person. Joe Keenan is not one to bask in the limelight or recognition. He probably right now is ready for me to finish my comments. Nevertheless, he is most worthy of being inducted into Lancaster County's Education Hall of Fame. Lancaster County School District was and continues to be a better place because of his leadership in and legacy to this district.
Well, good afternoon. I could say ditto to everything that Dr. Jordan just said. But from my own perspective, Dr. Joseph Keenan, what can I say? I met him in 1998 when I was hired on at Lancaster High School as a school nurse. When I first met him, initially my thought was, wow, he's big. It is my honor and privilege to speak on behalf of Dr. Keenan, affectionately known as Joe, Bear, things of that nature, Doc. As an inductee into the Lancaster County School District Education Hall of Fame, I nominated Dr. Keenan to the Lancaster County School District Education Hall of Fame because I found him to be an exemplary leader. He stood firm in his decisions. His presence demanded respect, maybe because of his stature. Might have something to do with it. But Dr. Keenan motivated people to do their best and to be their best. He'd often say to us in the faculty, in the staff meetings, "I'd rather have you here on your worst day than to have the best sub on their best day." That always made me feel good to say that. He had quite a few teachers to become national board certified, and Lancaster High School also maintained the AYP for a number of years under his leadership, as well as some academic awards that Dr. Jordan just mentioned. He strived for excellence. The Bear, as some of us call him, was just that, kind of gruff on the outside, yet warm and fuzzy when it came to people, especially the kids. He was fair to the students, and they loved him. He'd go to bat for kids and staff if he knew they were right. Even when he was having a tough day, or one of those days that said, "Not today," he still had a heart of compassion for his staff and the students. I remember one day when I got sick, I was sitting at my desk in my office, and I was having what appeared to be a heart attack at that time, and I called him on the phone. He came rushing in, and I refused. He said, let's call the ambulance. I refused that, and he took me to the hospital in his car. I don't know if you remember that, Dr. Keenan. And took me and waited there with me until my husband came, and he stayed with me. And that wasn't the only time that Dr. Keenan showed that compassionate side. There were many other times and situations, even at the death of my father and the other times of being supportive. And of course, there were those days when that door was closed, you knew not to knock on that door. Dr. Keenan did things for people in the community that many people didn't even know about, the things that he was doing, and he didn't want to take credit for it. He helped people to get jobs. He helped them to get clothes and food, and he always took care of the custodial staff, especially at Christmas time. But I think one of his favorite passions was dressing up as Santa Claus so he can go read to the kids. I think that was one of his favorite things that he did. It is, again, my honor and my privilege to speak on behalf of Dr. Joseph Keenan as an inductee into the Hall of Fame. Although he and I did not actually call ourselves friends because we seldom talk except for business, but I always knew that he would have my back in any situation, and he proved that time and time again. It's my honor to speak on your behalf.
Dr. Keenan, if you'll make your way to the stage, and I'll just say I've had the pleasure as a first-year principal years ago to be able to call Dr. Keenan to get some good, sound advice, and he, without the shadow of a doubt, has done more for students without recognition and would get mad if you told anybody than we probably will ever know. A lot of folks look up to you, Joe, and it's not just because you're, yeah, that's right. You want to say a few words?
Well, I was told this week that we wouldn't be allowed to speak, so I don't know if the girl did that on purpose or not, so I didn't write anything down, thank goodness. But I really thought when I got the letter and the phone call it was a joke. I said, well, they must really be hard up for somebody to put into the Hall of Fame. But then when I see the quality of Doris Hood and Miss Walker and people like that, David, I'll leave you off. But I knew I was in with a good quality group, and it was an honor, and I really do appreciate it. And I look around this room, I see Floyd White, Roz, Maggie Gamble, Mr. Mathis gave me my first principal job, and so many other people, Butch Dutton. Just had the chance to work with some really great people, and I know a lot of people thought I was a grump, and I was, but I hope people will think I love my kids and I try to take care of them. Thank you.
Well, the third inductee is somebody who's very reserved, very quiet, and when he's in a room, you don't even know he's there. Anybody know David Knight? David Knight, we begged a few folks to say good things about him, and I'm kidding, David. We had quite a few folks that spoke that wanted to speak up for you. Richie Knight and Mr. Mathis, in that order, are going to come and say a few nice things about David.
Well, this is not me. I'm usually behind the camera, so it's a little unnerving, but when Michelle called and asked if I would speak on David's behalf, I told her I would be offended if they had not asked me to do this. First, let me say thank you for allowing me to do that. I first got to know David about 30 years ago when I was working at Channel 9 in Charlotte. As a public relations director, David was by far one of the best that we worked with. Because with David Knight, the story was never about David Knight. Rarely did you see his name attached to any story that was done about the Lancaster County School District. He believed the story was about those involved, and those folks were the ones who should be speaking. And he always put us in touch with those folks. He was always very responsive, even when the story might be about a tragedy that may have hit our community. He told me once that students and staff spent so much time at school, who better could speak on behalf of a person who no longer was there to speak for themselves than people within the district. He believed it was the responsibility to show everyone's worth, and as a journalist in a large market like Charlotte, that meant a lot to me. I knew the story was going to be more than a soundbite, and I knew he would always do what was in the best interest of students, teachers, staff, and administration of the district. David also believed that the great things that are happening here should be told, and had a way of getting those good stories in the media, especially in the local paper. You know, I think the editors of Lancaster News sort of hated to see David's number pop up on their caller ID because they knew he would convince them that his story deserved front page coverage. Well, today, more than ever, we need good stories about our schools, and we need them on the front page. But I don't believe David is being inducted into this Hall of Fame for his PR duties. I believe he is being inducted into this Hall of Fame for something he did because he loved, and something he did for the 20-plus years for no extra pay. Teaching broadcast journalism is what I really believe David might be inducted into this for. When I came to work for the district, I went to David and told him that I needed a video camera, and then we could tell some of the great stories that were happening in our district. He told me he didn't have any money for a video camera. So I said, David, we'll write a grant. And he said, well, we've got to have student involvement if we're going to seek a grant. So he said, let's see if we can tie in with the high school journalism program. Well, just like David, he didn't think anything else about it. He quickly picked up the phone. He called Dr. Keenan. And it took Dr. Keenan a little bit to get to the phone. And, you know, I'm not sure if I should thank you for taking time getting to the phone that day or curse you for it. Because what ended up happening, David looked at me while he was waiting and said, hey, why don't we start a broadcast journalism program? Well, you got to understand, here I had never taught a class. I was not an educator. And David had not had a TV in his house for about 15 years. What perfect team to teach a broadcast journalism class. He then became my boss, and we created Learn TV. The perfect pair, I guess, to do this broadcast journalism program with the kind of experience we'd had. But from that first day in that journalism class, I knew David was a special teacher. From day one of every semester, David was able to see the good in every single student. From day one of every semester, every student could see how much David Knight cared. You know, we all hear that saying that kids don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Well, David has this incredible way of showing kids how much he cares. David also has an incredible ability to see good in everyone and to see potential in everyone. And I saw that within the first couple of months that we were doing the Learn TV program. A reporter from the Rock Hill Herald came over to do a story about our class. David first told the reporter this story has to be about the students, not about us. And so the reporter came in and was talking to several of the students, and one student told the reporter that before David's class, he hated coming to school and was very close to dropping out because he could not do the work and he would miss a lot of classes, and because of that, so many teachers had given up on him, or at least that's what this kid thought. He went on to tell the reporter that since being in David's class, he had not missed a day of school, and he looked forward to coming to school every day. This is just one of the many stories of student lives that were changed because of David. Anyone here that has worked with David knows that he has a habit of pushing deadlines. Some might say he has a habit of missing deadlines. I like to say pushing deadlines. Well, what you may not know is the reason so many of those deadlines were pushed. There would be many days that David would be in a conference room at the district office with a student that was up against a deadline of getting an essay turned in for a scholarship or admittance to college. David would put aside his work to sit down and work with that student no matter how long it took. And that still happens today. David and I talk a couple of days a week. I called him the other day. I said, "What you been doing?" He said, "Just finished with a student who was writing an essay for school." He's still doing it, and he's still making a difference in kids' lives. And quickly, to give you an idea of how many lives David has had an effect on, I figured it up, and in the 20-plus years that we were doing the Learn TV program, we had about 15,000 people come through our building to be on our shows. You know, that's 15,000 people who were on TV for something good. That's 15,000 people who touched the lives of our students. That's 15,000 people who got to see the good things that were happening in our schools. David would tell our students that when we started the broadcast journalism program, he told the superintendent at the time, "Give me 90 minutes a day, and I will change the way people think about our kids." Well, that turned into 180 minutes a day that he would be down at our building and countless other minutes of the day that he was working to tell those good stories in our district. In closing, I want to read some of the Facebook posts former students wrote when David retired. One student wrote, "He's a special person that will never be replaced. He has motivated many kids over his time with the Lancaster County School District. I was in the very first Learn TV class, and I will forever carry fond memories. Thanks for your vision and selflessness. You guys made it happen, and there are many of us that have benefited from your vision and leadership for 20-plus years." Another student wrote, "As one of the oldest members of this group, it is sad to see half of the biggest school influences in my life retire. I'm beyond happy for him, but I'm sad for the students that he won't be there daily to push to be better, to make them laugh, to make them see the good in themselves." Still another wrote, "David didn't give me a job, he gave me a passion. He gave an opportunity to do something I love, and I'm forever grateful and indebted to him. He's my favorite teacher and mentor." And for the last one, you need a little bit of context. Every day as students would leave, David would put his arm around their shoulders, and they could not escape our building without this happening. He'd put his arm around their shoulders and send them off and show them how much he cared. This young lady wrote, "He impacted my life so much. He was like another dad to me. If I needed help or advice, David was always there for me. Hands down, he was the best teacher, and his passion for what he did inspired so many of us. He made Learn TV feel like a safe place to be myself and somewhere to look forward to coming every day. And to hear his great advice, KISS, keep it simple, stupid, or don't get pregnant this weekend. We will never know the impact of what that great advice has had on our kids. But I can guarantee you that there are many former students that can say David Knight made a difference in their lives."
Good afternoon. Over 30 years in public education in 4 different school districts, I had many fine students and many outstanding colleagues that I worked alongside over that 30-year period. But 2 stand out. The first that stands out is Coach Gus Allen, who gave me my first coaching job in 1965, and in 1968 brought me to Lancaster. No one could have asked for a better mentor during my first 5 years in education. Let's fast forward 20 years. Summer of 1988, I was completing my last year as the elected County Superintendent of Education and beginning my first year as the newly hired District Superintendent of Education. We had eliminated area boards. We had a new county board. We'd gone from 31 board members down to 13, eventually 9, and then 7. We were bringing together the 4 high schools and all the teachers and students and everybody in the county under one district, kind of one umbrella. We needed to have a bond referendum because of the facilities in the district had really been neglected. So we had a lot of things we were dealing with, and the board and I determined that we needed to bring somebody on as a PR person, someone who could come in and help us communicate effectively, accurately, and truthfully with all of our constituents in Lancaster County, both in the school system and that supported the school system. A former area board member and our then House member, Representative Billy Bone, came to me. He had heard what we were dealing with, and he said, "You need to talk to David Knight over at USCL." So I met with David, and we talked, went back to the board, and in August of 1988, David came on board with us in the school district. And he did what we needed done. His skill set in communication, his skill set in working with people just surpassed anything that I could imagine. But you know, as I think back, and in part like Richie said, what made him the David Knight we know and love is that David had an innate goodness, and he just loved people, loved working with people, could reach out, and people knew that and could feel that from him. So David did that, and we worked together for 5 years and did some things in this district, and a lot of the credit will go to David for the word we got out and the way it was received around this county. You know, some of us follow college football, and we know what it is during the time of recruiting, and you can have a class that's maybe at a middle tier as far as the recruits go, and then all of a sudden that program gets a 5-star recruit, and the recruiting class comes up a tier or 2. With David's Knight induction into the Lancaster County Education Hall of Fame, we just came up a notch or 2. So I congratulate you, David. I love you, and just the best for you and your wife and family in the future.
David, if you will come up to accept this award, you can bring with you anyone you would like, or not. I will say in 1995, David may not remember this because, you know, he starts to slip a little bit when I talk with him, I think. But in 1995, he spoke to a group of first-year teachers for Lancaster County, and it actually was in the same room where Learn TV was, but back then it was a band room, if I'm not mistaken. And as I sat there, and this guy in a T-shirt and blue jeans was telling the group of first-year teachers like myself that what matters is caring for kids. And his advice was, if you put kids first, everything else will fall into place. 28 years later, I really appreciate that advice.
My daddy always told me it's better to be lucky than good. That's why I'm here. Just lucky. I'm lucky that that committee picked me. But since I was in with Dr. Keenan, hey, pretty good. And I'm really lucky that Billy Bone kind of pushed me to go talk to Mr. Mathis. And super lucky that Mr. Mathis kind of overlooked who I really was and said, hey, come to work. And so I did that. And Mr. Mathis and I, those 5 years really seemed like longer than that. They shaped me so much. We're kind of like the odd couple. I don't know if you know Mr. Mathis. And David's like pile it up and keep piling it. So and then I'm super lucky to work with so many great people. I mean, I look around this room, I see so many of you that I just love, and I love working with you. And I'm lucky. I'm just a lucky person. And I couldn't get anybody from my family to come walk up here with me. But I'm lucky to have Susan, so, you know, at least I got her that far. But y'all, thank you very much. Thank you for thinking about me and considering me and picking me for this honor. Thank you.
The fourth and final inductee today is Miss Juanita B. Walker. To share a tribute to Miss Walker, Miss Deborah Curitan will come back to speak again, and also Miss Tamika Walker. Dr. Curitan.
It is my honor to present to some and to introduce to others the late Mrs. Juanita Brown Walker, one of the inductees into the Lancaster County Education Hall of Fame for 2022. Those of us in education are intimately aware that education is not confined to the classroom. For most educators, it encompasses the way we live. Juanita B. Walker epitomized that broad view of education. I know this because Mrs. Walker was my dad's sister. If Aunt Juanita had ever wanted to teach at the college level, and she was qualified to do so, she would need to have created a resume listing degrees, prior teaching experience, and other activities that would convince the college that she would bring attributes that would inspire learning and represent the institution in a positive way. Creating this resume, she would have begun with her own academic achievements, her schools attended, degrees attained, work history, etc., and then added other activities. For each experience listed, she would express how that experience or attribute suggests that she would be a good fit for the position that the institution wanted to fill. So beyond her college degrees, she could have listed related experiences that would demonstrate her activities in educating herself and others. She might first list faculty member of the Lancaster County School District as both classroom teacher and guidance counselor. She might list member of the Lancaster United Education Association. She might list member of the South Carolina Association of Attendance Supervisors, which gave her both local and state experience. She might then list Camp Creek AME Zion Church, where she was Director of Christian Education and Sunday School teacher, church secretary, trustee secretary, steward secretary, delegate to the Lancaster District of the AME Zion Church, delegate to the PD Conference of the AME Zion Church for more than 20 years, and St. Mary's Chapter number 170, Order of the Eastern Star. She could then expand to list her service activities as an officer of the Lancaster branch of the NAACP and member of the South Carolina Conferences of branches of the NAACP. Aunt Juanita's family was the only family I knew that owned a motorhome to take them to the various conferences they had to attend. Then she might list other community services, such as a member of the City Election Commission, the 5th District Political Action Committee, Lancaster County Council on Aging Incorporated, the South Carolina Roundtable, the United States Selective Citizens Review Board, Ladies Auxiliary of the Lancaster County Sheriff's Department, and Uncle Tom Lee, her husband, has his own story, the Lancaster News Advisory Committee, the Carolina Community Action. Aunt Juanita would probably end with her membership in the Iota Theta Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Educators change lives. Mrs. Walker and Juanita was a life changer. She was an exceptional educator. Ask her students. Ask her daughter.
To Dr. Phipps, the school board attendees, the honorees, educators, families, and friends, good afternoon. If you have to tip out, that's okay. You see, I have some, no, I'm kidding. I can be long-winded though, but I'll try to wrap it up. But to the Education Hall of Fame Committee, I thank you so very, very much. From the bottom of my heart, I am eternally grateful that you would choose my mother to be inducted into the Education Hall of Fame. Just a little bit about her. In 1947, she graduated from Lancaster Training School. And from there, she went to Friendship Junior College, where she got an associate degree in teacher training. And from there to Allen University, where she got a Bachelor of Science degree in elementary education. And then to A&T University, where she got a master's degree in guidance counseling and elementary education. She loved teaching. She loved students. She loved anyone that she could help cultivate their potential to do whatever they could do in this life. I have testimonials from a couple of people that attended Hillside High, because that's where she was probably most known as an educator. Now, she started in 1949 in Oak Ridge Elementary School, and that was a one-room school with a pot-bellied stove, and she was the head teacher of, I think, 2. So that was her humble beginning in education. And she matriculated into Hillside Elementary, Hillside High School, Flat Creek Elementary. But I must say she finished her career for 20 years as attendance supervisor for the Lancaster County School District, a job that she really loved, and she loved working alongside Mrs. Ann Folks. So back to Hillside, the alumni that I had the privilege of talking to shared with me the impact that my mother had on them. And they were kind enough to send me something via email. The first person is Dr. Jerry Gaither, and this is what he wrote. As a student of Hillside High and Elementary School from 1955 to 1967, I got a pretty good background knowledge of who Mrs. J.B. Walker was, and that's how they knew her, as Mrs. J.B. Walker. I had her as a mentor and advisor. I spent 12 years of seeing her on the Hillside campus. During my high school days from 9th through 12th grade, she served as my counselor and advisor. She was my drama coach, and she would lead me through 2 high school plays. Now, during their rehearsal hours, sometimes she would say, "My husband says he fought a gorilla." And that was just to get their attention so they would learn their lines and have that vigor and that drive to complete. But it's true, he did wrestle a gorilla, but that's another story for another day. As a counselor, she knew the strength and background of every student because she had to rank them and often speak to various colleges about students' ability to go to college. She knew our parents, and she knew where practically everyone lived, especially those within a 25-mile radius of Mount Carmel Campground. That's how many of the students got to know her. She spent a lot of time at the campground and slept in the tents just like we did. I think that brought us closer to her. And she got the chance to know our parents. Dr. Gaither went on to say, "Inasmuch as my academic counselor, she knew my academic strength and monetary background. She knew many of us worked on the farms, and parents lived and worked as sharecroppers and could not afford to send us to college. Therefore," she would say, "if you can't get into South Carolina State, Benedict, or Allen University, then go to Friendship or Clinton Junior College in Rock Hill, South Carolina." Now, those two junior colleges were mainly supported by the Baptist and Methodist churches and often gave a few dollars to help their college-bound students. And then she went on to say, if that didn't work, or if that doesn't work, go to Springs Mill and get a job. And he said that's just what he did. He went to work for 1 full year at Grace Bleachery, and then he enrolled in Friendship Junior College. He said her counseling paid off. After completing 2 years at Friendship, he enrolled in Morris College in Sumter, South Carolina in January of 1971 and graduated in May of 1973 with a degree in biology. He says, it was Mrs. J.B. Walker's inspiration and God-given talent that led her to instill that good advice in me, which led me to wanting to get everything I could out of college and earn the highest degrees. And because of that, today, I have a PhD in educational administration. He said there were many times she may have thought that I wasn't paying attention, but I took it all in. Through the years, whenever I saw her, I let her know that she pointed me in the right direction to have a successful life. I also spoke to Felice Patterson Cargill. She's an alumnus as well from Hillside High. She echoed many of the sentiments, as did Dr. Gaither. As she reflected over the past 55 years, she attributed much of her professional and life success to the contributions made by Mrs. Walker. She stated that it truly takes a village to raise a child, and she felt lucky to include Mrs. Walker as part of her village. She shared that my mother had a caring heart for all students. Well, I know that to be true. When I was a little girl, she brought a little girl home with her. And I thought she was just bringing me a playmate. But what it turned out to be is that she asked that child's parents if she could bring her home so that she could prepare her for her pictures the next day. That night, my mom ran a bath for her with all the bubbles and everything. And she got into the bathtub. That was her first time ever being in a bathtub. And she said, oh, God, this feels so good. And I'm standing there thinking, child. But she enjoyed the bath so much. Something that simple meant so much to her, she didn't want to get out. And, of course, my mom encouraged her to come on, let's get out. She was about to prune up. But anyway, the next day, she gave her one of my dresses, dressed her in one of my dresses. And when the little girl saw the dress, she said, oh, that's so pretty. I wasn't even thinking about that dress. But as soon as she started fawning over this dress, I'm like, why are you giving her my dress? And if you knew my mom, she said, matter-of-factly, hush your mouth, you got another one just like it. To see the joy on that child's face was priceless. So my mom did her hair, she went to school and took a nice picture. That's the kind of person she was. She really loved the students. And anytime she saw any potential in them, she didn't let them waste it. She pushed them, found avenues for them to go so they could achieve whatever they could achieve. As a matter of fact, my aunt is sitting right here in this audience, Peggy Walker Frazier. Some of you probably know her. She shared with me several times. She said, had it not been for your mom, I probably wouldn't be where I am today. Peggy shared that my mom wanted to send her to college because she knew that she could excel. And I'm telling you a story. You could tell it yourself, though. And she said she couldn't let her do that since my brothers were in college at the same time. But my mom said, well, if you won't let me send you to school, then I'll pay for your wedding. And that's just what happened. She did the same with her children, tried to push us to fill our full potential, but we weren't as, we did the best we could with what we had. As I move forward with this, I'll read an excerpt from Mrs. Cargill's letter. She said, as a hillside counselor, she helped me and countless other young people focus on goals that many others in our environment said we couldn't achieve. I still cherish the book that she shared with me at my graduation, which I hope I recall correctly, was entitled Don't Quit. Those words and the attitude conveyed by that book instilled a focus in me that inspired me through undergraduate and graduate school, as well as provided me with the confidence to step out into the professional world and compete with other young people. I honor and cherish the time I spent with her during my high school years. My mother had the capacity to meet students where they were and encourage them to move forward to reach their full potential. For those that struggled, she had the patience to help them find and focus on their strengths and abilities. She could identify those who could walk the halls of academia and those who could develop a skill and hone a craft. The most remarkable thing about that was she saw neither one better than the other. Both could lead to success. As I close, I would say that my mother, if she were here, she would be extremely humble. She would be grateful that you would consider her and induct her into this Hall of Fame. But she would also say, as much as I appreciate this, my reward is in heaven. As I leave to take my seat, I like to close with a poem that I'm sure if my mom had known it, and she might have, she would have shared with one of her students. And it's entitled, the same as that book I aforementioned, Don't Quit. When things go wrong, and it's by, let me say who it's by, Edgar A. Guest. You may be familiar with him. When things go wrong, as they sometimes will, when the road you're trudging seems all uphill, when the funds are low and the debts are high, and you want to smile, but you have to sigh, when care is pressing you down a bit, rest if you must, but don't you quit. Life is queer with its twists and turns, as every one of us sometimes learns. And many a fellow turns about when he might have won had he stuck it out. Don't give up, though the pace seems slow. You may succeed with another blow. Often the goal is nearer than it seems. To a faint and faltering man, often the struggler has given up when he might have captured the victor's cup. And he learned too late When the night came down, how close he was to the golden crown. Success is failure turned inside out, the silver tint of the clouds of doubt. And when you never can tell how close you are, it may be near when it seems afar. So stick to the fight when you're hardest hit. It's when things seem worse that you must not quit. Thank you very much. Hillside Elementary, and she and my mother worked well together. And Dr. Denson is a former alumni of Hillside High. So, but I can accept this award on her behalf. Thank you so very, very much.
Well, as we close, I'm going to ask Mr. Brad Small if he is still, there he is, he just appears, still with us, the vice chair of our school board, to say a few closing remarks. Brad is passionate about helping our school district and our community, and he gives very generous of his time to do so. And I just want to say thank you all for coming today. And, you know, for those of us that are still working, or for some that show up and pretend like they are, I forgot, David, you're retired. So those of us that are still working, we stand on the shoulders of the good foundation that your hard work has created. And it means so much. Today's world, public education is at a crossroads. It's at a different place than it's ever been before. And then some would even say it's under attack in some ways. Teachers are hard to find, and they're getting even harder to find in the future, we believe. But folks like you and folks that are sitting here and on stage, the work that you've done is, you may not see the seeds immediately, but you've planted some good seeds on fertile ground that I think the future is in good hands because of your hard work. And I, for one, just really appreciate all that you stand for and all that you've done.
Thank you, Dr. Phipps. It's an honor to be here with you today, to stand in front of some of these great educators. Some in this room taught me. So it's always awesome to come back to Lancaster High School and be a part of just great folks, great educators, just great people. So I want to take this time to say, Ms. Hood, thank you. Dr. Keenan, thank you. David, thank you. And to Tamika, your mom, thank you. What a great honor it is today. I would like to recognize some fellow board members. We got Miss Maggie Gamble over here. Thank you, Maggie. Melvin Strobel was here. He had a 3 o'clock appointment. We have Mr. Tyrone Faulkner. Thank you, Tyrone. You know, our district is fortunate to have dedicated educators, staff, and community leaders. You have positively impacted our schools and our community. Thank you for your great service to our district. And again, I want to thank everyone that is in here that came today, whether there's friends, families, that support our schools, support these 4 honorees, and support our community. And at this time, I want to thank you again. I hope you guys have a great afternoon, and try to let you guys out before the Lancaster High School traffic gets bad. So if you've ever experienced that, you know what I mean. But thank you so much, and have a good afternoon and evening.